Hello and welcome back to a new YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing my 14.5 ADC tier list, so if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. I'm gonna start from fresh here, as I want to talk about a lot of things within the tier list, and some of the adjustments this patch. Notable ones being obviously Twisted Fate, getting hit with a sledgehammer, Cogmore's rise in power, and a couple other things, so let's go through it. To begin with, the champions are listed in least popular to most popular in Emerald Plus for this patch. I kind of want to cover some of the mages, as a lot of them are doing really well at the moment, actually kind of hidden, like, strong picks. For example, Acel is going to be in my S tier. Acel is a champion which some people have started to pick up on as being a really good bot laner. I've seen it around. I know some people have picked it up in some of the lower tier regions from the LEC, the ERLs, and it has performed quite well. It is definitely a pick I'd recommend trying out, seeing if you enjoy. He is relatively strong within the mid lane as well at the moment, and it might end up getting him nerfed, but he is a very strong bot laner. Definitely give it a go. Solid S tier pick. This tier list is usually targeted towards mid elo. Some champions which are a bit more elite skewed, Varus, Callista, I wouldn't recommend as much, which is why you will see they'll end up in lower tiers. But mainly kind of like focusing around that area is where a lot of the player base is. I'll talk about stuff which is obviously elite skewed and some picks which are easier, which is why I rate them a bit higher throughout the tier list. But yeah, that's kind of like a heads up in a way. Karthus is pretty unpopular at the moment as well in the bot lane. He has seen times where he's been very powerful, like solid S plus pick. In his current state, he is more of an A tier pick. He's fine. Like, if you want a good AP carry, he is very strong in that regard. He has a very good time skirmishing with a lot of champions. His range can be quite oppressive. His ISO damage on Qs is quite oppressive. There's just lots of strengths to this champion. He just doesn't have as much DPS as some of the other picks, or as many meriting factors. Like Swain, who I'll talk about in a second, is also very strong. But Hui, for the moment, is going to end up in my B tier. He's a fine bot laner. He underperforms a bit compared to some of the AP carries, but that's mostly because he ends up being a bit harder to play and pull off. You do want to be very oppressive during laning phase. I've seen variants of builds, whether it's the Luden's Companion or the Archangelist you're going, but he's a solid B tier pick. Not much to it. Swain is going to be over my S tier. He's a great frontline, like, fighter mage. He's kind of unique in that aspect of being, like, the only one in his class in the bot lane. You don't really have many fighter drain AP tanks, like, around that area. In the top lane, of course, you have things like Mordekaiser, Singe to a degree, kind of fills that niche. But yeah, in the bot lane, he fills his own kind of role. He is decent at it. Malignance is a very good item on him. Rylai's is a very good item on him. And yeah, he's a good S tier pick for this reason. Veigar got buffed this patch. He is performing a lot better now. He is now a solid A tier AP pick. Ziggs going to be within my B tier. Ziggs not as strong as he has been in the past. He's still a very good sieger. That is kind of like the key reason you're picking this champion. His oppressive range is also very much another reason. But yeah, Luden's Companion tends to be what you opt into. Seraph's isn't performing as well, I believe, but you can still pick it up as like a second option, second item option. Rabadon's makes out for like a good third item on this champion. Horizon Focus can work quite nicely on him, as he can abuse the range on it. But yeah, he's a solid B tier pick, good sieger. If you compare him well with things and like you can utilize him within comps, he's a great pickup. Seraphine got hit this patch a bit. She got pushed more towards support, as they kind of wanted to tap down her APC power, as she was performing a bit too well in that role. She's still doing fine. She's a good solid AP enchanter option. Not as high DPS as someone like a Karthus or a Veigar, but has a lot more utility outputs, decent CC. Her E can be really impressive once you have Rylai's. Her ult is a very powerful tool, one of the most powerful ultimates if you can utilize it to its full extent. And yeah, she's a solid A tier option for this. Yasuo is also going to be on my A tier. He's not performing as well as he has done in the past. I imagine he will be a really big benefiter or beneficiary of the IE changes next patch, but for the moment he's in the A tier. He's solid on both Borg and Kraken Slayer as a first item option. Now that Kraken Slayer has been pushed towards more of a level scaling item, he does tend to perform a bit better on the Borg. But you can still opt into things like Shieldbow, i.e. both the items are very good on him, and he is a solid A tier pick. He can counter a lot of champions within the bot lane with his Wind Wall, which is a very good thing for him to have. Twisted Fate got hit pretty heavily this patch. He finds himself within the B tier. He can still operate within the bot lane. He's just not as strong or oppressive as he used to be. The E does a lot less damage, losing like 55% AD ratio on that ability. Alongside that, he lost a bit of attack speed. He did get tapped down in the patch before that as well. And overall, his power level is kind of in a fairly balanced spot at this point. And yeah, he finds himself within the B tier for this reason. Nyla is going to be within my S plus tier. So Nyla is a great champion if you can pair her with the things she wants. The likes of Soraka, Sona tend to operate quite well with this champion. As you can utilize for heal shield power. Tarek is also a really good synergy. And Senna, of course, also very strong pairing to help this champion. Yeah, if you can utilize her pairings, utilize the kit, the collector rush into like Navori. I've seen some static Nylas. It has performed quite well actually at the moment. It might be something you kind of want to opt into if you're not able to get as consistent advantages within the game to really utilize collector. But yeah, there are builds there. She's performing really well, has a lot of tools to deal with a lot of the marksmen, does huge amounts of damage, really great team fighter, and yeah, there's a lot of power to this champion, and that's why she finds herself in the S plus tier. Kalista tends to be a bit harder to pilot than a lot of the other champions on this list. A lot of champions do also just answer Kalista, like Ashe, MF can work quite nicely against her. The slows are quite powerful in that regard. Of course, MF's damage output can be quite high in bursts if you're getting like first strike lethality MF. PTA MF also works within this space as well if you are going like a more Kraken Slayer route. But yeah, lethality tends to be a bit easier to pilot in that regard. But for Kalista, you can still opt into the on-hit builds. I know some people like the Yomu's rush on her. It does have a solid win rate if you are looking to go like a Q-Max Yomu's build. But yeah, I'd recommend the Bork Ginsu's Terminus, where you're mainly playing on hit and like you're playing around your 2-3 item spike. But if you're not able to close out games early with this champion, I would not recommend it. You are very much reliant on like your early game, your early 1-2 items, and then like into thirds to like really snowball and then close out the game. Yeah, you need those advantages. That's the main thing. Tristana going to be over my B tier. She's doing fine. She's played a lot in both ADC and mid lane. And overall, her power stays relatively neutral. She tends to be a bit more pro-skewed within mid lane. But like you're opting into things like the Kraken Slayer, the Static Shiv, and then going something like a Navori. And she works quite nicely with these items. She's a solid B tier pick. Xayah is actually giving my C tier. I don't like Xayah. I think Xayah's pretty bad at the moment. You have to be really far ahead to like get a lot out of this champion. She's a bit lower range. Her kind of main thing is the fact that she has self-pill and like a solid root, which makes her a bit more of a pro-jailed champion, but she doesn't see a huge amount of pro play at the moment, although she does see a bit. But within solo queue, I would not recommend her over a lot of the other champions at the moment. Her tools are a bit more limited, and she's just not as strong as she has been in the past, where you can operate like really well off like Kraken Slayer into like a Navori build. But yeah, she's going to move on my C tier. She's not unplayable. I don't believe any ADCs in their current states are unplayable, but she's probably one of the weaker ones, alongside Aphelios, who was very strong at the beginning of the season in solo queue, but is a very hard to pilot champion. You've got to get your weapon rotations correct. You also have to be able to just space really well. He's a very, like, Aphelios, more than a lot of marksmen, is very reliant on his spacing to utilize his kit to its full extent, and yeah, I wouldn't recommend him over a lot of picks. You are still looking at like the Collector / Kraken Slayer variants of Aphelios. But yeah, I would recommend other picks at the moment. Sivir, performing a bit better this patch. Obviously, she got the 4 armor buff, and it definitely did help her. Gave her a bit more durability, but the main thing with Sivir is like if you compare her with an enchanter, or you're not so confident in like your ability to lane, then yes, you have like lots of wave clear options. You can opt into like Static Shiv, and yeah, you're very safe. You can scale up into the late game, and she can be very powerful in that space. Quite easy to play, which is why she does kind of find herself in the A tier. I do believe she kind of falls off a bit higher up, where you are going to be playing against people who are more refined on their champions. But yeah, she's a solid A tier option within mid elo. Kog'Maw, definitely a big winner of this patch. I I was interested to see whether like the changes would do a huge amount, as I did have him on my C tier last patch. I believe he was probably more of a B tier champion, but yeah, C tier was a fine place to have him. This patch, obviously, it opens up the ability to do have like a point in E, which is actually quite important on Cogmore now. Like being able to use that slow to like gap close onto people and then like chase them down with his damage is actually really powerful, and it does give him a lot more merit as like a pickable champion. He has received like buffs towards his builds. The Ginsu's buff, the Terminus buff definitely did help him, and overall it's given him a lot of power. If you can like really utilize his champion's W and his kit, then yes, he can work really well at the moment. The Q quality of life change was really nice for him. Bit more passive movement speed, bit more of an AD ratio on the ultimate. And yeah, he's in a good spot. He's a solid S tier pick. Draven is going to be with my A tier. I wouldn't recommend playing Draven unless you are confident with this champion and you run like and you just go hubris and you just snowball out of the game. Like that is the only way I'd ever really recommend playing this champion at the moment. Like you have to get advantages. If you don't get advantages on Draven and like your laning phase is like play to neutralize, then don't play Draven. Play a different champion. He's not good at that. Like there are other champions which I'd recommend over that in that space. But yes, if you are able to snowball, you're able to get your hubris going, and then you're able to opt into like really high damage items and snowball the game like in your control, then yes, he is a good pick. He is a good A tier pick. Twitch is going to be over my S tier. So Twitch has kind of always been a solid option within the ADC meta. He does answer a lot of like the popular champions, the Sennas, the Jins, stuff like this. Of course, the build is still like the Bork Runins. I've seen like different variants within pro play, where we saw Abel play it once, where it was like Bork into Ginsu's with magical footwear and no T2 boots, which looked horrible. Like I'm not gonna recommend that style of playing Twitch. But yeah, like Bork, Zerkers, pick up a Runins, and yes, you should be good to go for this champion. He will be a big benefit of the IE buffs next patch if you are opting into that route as well, and LDR of course also being buffed, which is an item he does like. So yeah, Twitch. Solid S tier pick, doing very well at the moment. Samira going to be over my B tier. She's not doing as well as Draven, and I kind of put these champions in the same boat as I mean, I'd say Samira is easier to pilot than Draven as one, and she's a bit less performant than Draven. Once again, you need to be snowballing. You want your collector, you want your IE, you want your shield bow, you want your BT, you want your LDR, you want to get these items going so you can like snowball throughout the game. It's just a bit less consistent than Draven within the laning phase, but like you do have better team fighting, of course. The ultimate is very powerful, but if you do get cancelled out of it, your champion can be very punishing to play. And I'd just recommend Draven over that. But yeah, if you're looking for something a bit easy to play, then yeah, Samira is still a solid option. MF going to be for my S tier. MF is like the bread and butter, easiest to play marksman. She's decently long ranged with her abilities. The champion's fairly easy to pilot. Her build is very cookie cutter if you're going like the lethality route, where you're going like Yomu's collector, Edge, Chevelda's GA, something like that. And yeah, she has a lot of power, she does a lot of damage, and yes, she's a very solid S tier pick. Vayne, going to be for my A tier. So Vayne got hit this patch. Her Q lost 2 seconds on the CD, and her passive lost 15 MS, which are big hits, and she drops from the S plus to the A tier for this. But yeah, you can still operate on both the Stormrazor Essence Reaver build or the Kraken Slayer Ginsu's build. They're fairly even in win rates at this point. And yeah, kind of pick which one you need within the game. If you are kind of like single target squishy damage, then yes, you want to be going the Essence Reaver variant. If you're looking at like a more like tank killing build, then you do want to be opting into the Bork Ginsu's or Kraken Ginsu's variant, and she'll find a bit more success there. Ashe going to be my S tier. Ashe also another very easy champion to play. Also answers a lot of the champions which are popular within the meta at the moment. Her slows, her ultimate, very powerful tools. Gives her a bit more utility, which like a lot of other marksmen do lack. And yeah, she's a very solid pick in the game at the moment. I definitely recommend playing Ashe. Varus going to be the my C tier. Both the on-hit and the lethality variants don't perform very well within like mid-elo solo queue. Once you kind of like get over that boundary of like and like into high, where people are more willing to play around your variants, like you can get down the poke if you like are opting into that playstyle within the game, or you can play the on-hit variant with success, like alongside like an enchanter, something like a Renata, then yes, he can be quite powerful. Within mid-elo, you do want something with a bit more like self-carry potential. he's a bit more reliant on setup for like his ultimate. And I just recommend other picks over Varus. He's still fine, like, but I'd recommend other things. Senna is going to be my S plus tier. She's being nerfed next patch. She's quite strong at the moment. Well, I said quite strong. She is probably the best marksman in the game at the moment. Her damage is oppressive. She has loads of tools which like other marksmen just don't have access to, like healing, shielding, powerful long range ultimate. Her Q is also a very strong slowing ability. She doesn't have, like, the same DPS levels as, like, a Jinx, but her damage is still very high. She has great single target. If you're able to get your souls and you're able to get your items online, then yes, she is the best marksman in the game. And yeah, that's kind of all there is to it. You want to pair her with, like, the Nautilus, the Tarm, Nyla if you are swapping her into the support role, but, like, you can play AD carry center with most things. And yeah, she works really well in that regard. Zeri, going to be my B tier. So Zeri got buffed not too long ago. Actually puts her in a very good spot in solo queue. Like, I'd actually recommend playing Zeri as like a hyper carry option at the moment. There are just better hyper carry options though, like which are easier to play and less like conditional on like the ultimates and stuff. Jinx being this kind of like space. But yeah, she's still a solid pick. Lucian going to be over my B tier. Once again, kind of falls into the trap of being a good elite pick, not being a great normal like mid-elo, low-elo pick. Tends to be a lot harder to pilot, tends to be a bit more reliant on like Sona, Nami combos, where you can like utilize your Light Slinger passive. But yeah, still a solid pick. Caitlyn going to be in my C tier. I'm not a fan of Caitlyn at the moment. Neither her lethality or her crit builds are particularly performant, but she's still not too bad. You can play her with a lot of things. You do need a lot of investment to make this champion work though, and there's a lot more consistency in other picks. Jhin going to be within my B tier. Jhin has slowly just fallen down the tier list. Like, I'm a Jhin hater. Like, I think this champ is terrible. Like, he's slow. He's not great against tanks. He's not great against assassins. He's got not a lot of mobility. Like, the main selling point is the fact that he has a lot of lockdown and sees, like, he's, like, control with W traps, his ultimate, stuff like this. Gives him a lot of tools, but you have to play him like an early game champion. Like, you want to win laning phase, you want to be able to get like advantages so you can get your items early. But I just wouldn't recommend Jhin. Like, there are other champions with better DPS and just better tools than Jhin, and yeah, I'm not a fan of him. Like, yeah, I'd recommend other things over Jhin. On the other side of things, I recommend Jinx. Jinx is a great champion. People seem to have forgotten about this. Like, Jinx is really good, and I'd really recommend playing this champion. She's easy to play. Her damage is really high. Yes, you are still very vulnerable to assassins, but most marksmen are. And she can have a hard time getting through tanks. But if you're able to get snowballing, you're able to get your passive going, you're able to get, like, a good laning phase, and you're getting your items, then yes, she can snowball games out of control. She does, like, snowball off towers as well now, like, really well. And yeah, she can work really well in the ADC space at the moment, and I definitely do recommend her. Ezreal going to be over my B tier. He's a very hard to pilot champion. If you can pilot him well, then yes, he does rise up the tier list. But for like more generalistic play, he's like a B tier option. Essence or even Manamune. Spirit Trojan is a bit kind of like, Spirit Trojan appears to be very strong on this champion, but not built as much as it probably should be. And yeah, he can work really well with this like 3 item power spike. Smolder going to be over my S plus tier. So Smolder, very strong at the moment, got buffed and then hotfix nerfed and is still doing too well. Like, his win condition is just too consistent with the 225 stacks into execute kind of mark. Essence Reaver into Navori or Spirit Shoujin tends to be the route you want to go. Then like things like RFC, Liandry's can work quite nicely on him. And then finally, Kai'Sa, going to move in my B tier. I know the artillery build is quite popular, or is gaining popularity at the moment, as like LS has popularized it. It's not bad, but I would recommend other champions within mid-elo. You need a bit more setup for the artillery build to work. And if you're playing Kai'Sa, just play like the static Ginsu's variant. It's got a lot more consistency within solo queue, and it's definitely a good route to take. But yeah, overall, those are my thoughts on the ADC tier list. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.